Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Sean Atwood channel. We are live with Just Joe. We're going to be hearing his long and intricate story, his path through life, his journey, and how he's ended up where he is and where he came from. And it's going to be a different story than usual. And I'm very, very, very pleased that Joe gave up his time to come and speak with us. And it's going to give us all a different angle and perspective on the varieties of life for sure. But Joe, thank you so much for coming and talking with us today. And first of all, how are you doing? And thanks for being here.
I'm doing well, thank you.
That's great. Right, everybody in the side chat. This is Joe. Now, Joe, just introduce yourself and take us on your journey, because I think a lot of points in your story are going to be triggering for people. I think a lot of people are going to be at some points triggered as to even you being here having this conversation. But I think when you hear the whole story play out, it's important to look upon this subject from a different angle, because at the end of the day, everyone here, Joe included in the side chat, anything that can be done to further protect children is a good thing. And that is where you're at now. So Joe, take us away. Take us on your journey, if you will.
All right, thank you, Ron. Um, I'm just Joe. Uh, I'm a 58-year-old retired chicken farmer. Um, I have created my own private solitary confinement. Um, it just makes me feel safer because of what I created and what was created in me. Um, about a year ago, I put a hook into the ceiling and tied it up and got pretty ripped and failed to calculate my weight against the bolt as it pulled out of the joist, and came crumbling to the ground in an attempt to end my life. The sheriff ended up coming. My daughter called in, and I would say that that was one of the new beginnings at that moment, is that I had reached a point of despair where I couldn't even be successful in taking my own life. And I had been in a 12-step program prior to my conviction for 20 years. And I knew what the solution was, is that I needed to go help somebody, right? And I'm like, well, who in the hell would want my help, right? I'm, according to the newspaper, I'm a sex offender and a felon. Regardless if the law was changed and regardless if the felony was overturned, none of that really matters because the newspaper and Google will always win. So I have been branded a social leper for life. Um, and once I stopped being a little child and owned up to what I did and accepted responsibility for what I did, I can't go back and alter it, but I can make sure that, one, I don't do it again, and two, that I can help make amends. Now, amends is different than saying you're sorry. Amends is repairing it. And so I needed to look at how to repair it. And so I got on my knees and I asked the universe, what could I do? And it said, go back into prison, go back into incarceration and help these men who have harmed someone. Um, and I asked why. And it said, well, the end result here is that we just want to have one less child become abused, just one.
And just to be clear, Joe, your conviction when it happened was a consensual situation, and the individual that it was with was a 16-year-old. And in the UK and in various other places around the world, that is the age of consent, if you will. So I just wanted to bring that up, just because we're saying protecting children a lot, and I know in some places 16 is very much still considered a child. Um, but your story has it's got a different.
Well,
tail to it, shall we say.
I own it, right? I
Yeah.
did what I did. I'm not going to escape it. There's no way to undo it. But I can move forward, right? And so I can only do what I'm able to do.
Well,
And
100%. There's a lot of people who've done terrible things out there, Joe, and a lot of people who would try and get repentance or would want to talk about it or say that they've changed and things like this. And I would have no interest in talking with them. But
I,
your story and
I,
what
I haven't
happened,
changed. I've healed.
yeah, it's a very different story to a predatory monster running around systematically abusing. It's not like that. And even though there was a crime, you've sentenced, you've paid you've done your sentence, all the rest of it. I just want to reiterate that to people because our community has a lot of survivors, and I just want people to understand there's a reason for this conversation happening that isn't just Joe has an interesting story. Okay. Um, so please, Joe, do forgive me for interrupting, but carry on.
No, 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 thank you. I mean, I, I don't speak that way because I want to make sure that this is not me backing away from responsibility. I can honestly 100% say I am glad I was caught. My life changed. It was a sledgehammer that came and rocked my friggin' world, right? And I got the call on April 1st and it says, "Hey, you're being investigated." And then all of a sudden my world just came crashing down, right?
Okay, well, with that pretext, I'm going to just be quiet and I'm going to let you take us through your story, Joe.
Okay.
I just wanted to give everyone a little bit of a buffer, just in case some of the answers to clarify those key points were later on in the story. I just wanted to make sure everyone was on that page right off the bat. Again, because there's a lot of people out there who do terrible things, and I'm not saying what you've done is on the same level as some of these monsters that I've investigated or that have been hunted down before. And your story isn't that. And that's why we're here today. So I'm going to be quiet, Joe. Take
Yep.
us through in the way that you want to tell this story. And if there's points where you want to take a moment to see if there's any questions or you want my reaction, you just let me and I'll just let you go through this naturally. All right.
Sure, definitely. Um, so start in the beginning. Um, my father is or was in Lutheran seminary at the time, and we moved three different times in my childhood. The first 6 months, well, my father was, I don't know, was stationed at an orphanage, a Lutheran orphanage. So my first 6 months was in an orphanage with my dad's job. Um, then we moved for 6 more months, and none of this I really remember at all. Um, but we ended up in North Carolina, and you don't really understand because you don't have anything to gauge it against. And so my father started feeding me alcohol at the age of 7. The first drink that I had was cold duck. I remember I was in the nursery of the church. Um, and it didn't stop. It wasn't like a regular thing, um, but it was occasional, right? I mean, and so again, you don't understand that it's inappropriate. Um, go on to be the age of 9, and I'm being dealt Playboys by my father. And he's joking that I'm sharing it with all the neighborhood boys. So he's fully well aware that he's feeding the neighborhood's lust through me, right? A 9-year-old child, right? And I didn't understand that that was inappropriate till almost 3 years ago, right? When I started asking questions of other people, right? How did you get introduced to pornography? Right. And then I started hearing the stories and I'm like, holy crap, mine's really messed up. Right. And so you don't know it's messed up until you hear a healthy story. Right. where the father says, "Hey, man, you shouldn't be getting in my stuff." I mean, the real healthy story is the father doesn't have it to begin with, but we don't need to go down that far. So during this time, I experienced some overt and a few more covert, but a few overt um, parental uh, overstretches. I was required to rub his feet while we watched Lawrence Welk and eat popcorn while he exposed himself to me while he was wearing a robe. Um, my father encouraged me to be a voyeurism, I guess is the word. Um, Taught me how to at a couple of different places where to stand to look. Again, you just don't know. And so um, Charlotte ended with the last memory is that I had one of my good friends get hit by a car and died. And to get a full grasp of how messed up my thinking was, is that I blamed that boy for dying because I knew CPR and that my father had taught me that if I believed enough in Jesus, that I could heal him. And I was too afraid to go give that boy CPR. And so I felt responsible for his death. Now, my parents, neither one knew that I even experienced this. Um, till
And
nearly 20.
it was quite a famous case as well. That boy's death, right?
No, no,
Uh,
no, that's not it. No, no, this is just a car accident in Charlotte. Um,
okay, we're not
this
going
is
to that
where my
side.
father started teaching me how to be a criminal, really.
Okay,
So at
okay.
8 years of age, he wants me to jump into uh, a front end loader, turn the key, and drive it into the lake because they were looking at expanding the roadway. So he was fighting all this stuff. So he was encouraging me to get into this front loader and drive it into the lake to disrupt this stuff. Right. Again, you don't know. You just want to please your father. Right. So, what the real defining moment of what happened in my earliest childhood, besides the alcohol and witnessing my friend get killed by a car and the pornography, um, was that I look back now and understand that my father has always been an infant. Um, and I was given more talents than him, and he was quite jealous of me. And so at the age of 7, I went out and at that point, when I was a kid, we used to go door to door and sell seeds. Um, and I didn't sell more than anyone at the school. I sold more than anyone in the entire county. So I won the grand prize. And so my father came up to MC it, and I got up on the stage, right? I mean, I'm excited here. I was, looking through the catalog, all excited about what I was going to buy. And I get up on the stage, and my father just steals it from me, right? He makes me cry, right? And so who do you run to? Now you're on stage getting the grand prize. Your father's humiliating you in front of the entire school, and the school's laughing at you, right? 7, I split. I had nowhere to go, right? You're supposed to run to your parent when for protection. And so he's just humiliating. And this is what he still laughs about it up until I last talked to him, right? In his sermons, he would just humiliate me and talk about me and shame me in front of the entire congregation. Um, and it was normal. Um, so I fractured. I came up with a childhood mental illness, right? It's a childhood way of developing and dealing with the trauma. And so I had a split um, in my personality and created a protector. Her name is Rochelle, and she's a really nasty woman. Um, there are more that have been created out of there, and most of them are from an excessive of emotional stimuli. Jealousy created another woman, but there's quite a few more traumas that created other personalities. One's I'm just starting to learn, which one I call is the Oedipus, which is what I'm working on now. Um, so we moved from North Carolina to Florida. Now, this is, again, I don't understand. My parents and my sisters move into the house and they send me down, and I stay with an old couple. And then I stay with another family for another week where I'm tortured, right? Now, my family has moved into the house. I'm 6 blocks away, and yet I'm living in this other house where I'm being tortured. Just, I don't understand. I mean, I don't know any difference, right? So in Florida, it just takes off. My father, he gets this ego in his health. I mean, he basically wanted a golden cow, right? That's really what he went. And when he took the mission down in Florida, he discovered something, which is where there's a lot of money, and there's a lot of money in widows, lots, lots and lots of money in widows, especially who don't have families. So he started taking me into the hospitals to see these widows who are on the way out and they got nobody. And if you pay attention to somebody in their lost limbs of their life, right, they're really grateful, and you end up getting some money out of it, right? Because you're there at the end. And my dad became the number one estate getter in Florida. Um, he was quite successful at what he did. Um, he would take me to funerals of old women. I mean, the best place to pick up a new person for the church is widows and funeral, right? Who would think about, right?
Yeah. The widow whisperer.
Yeah. Yeah. And he took his little 15-year-old son with him, right? Because old widows love young little boys and flesh, man.
Yeah,
They
man.
really do. Um, so he started pawning me off to people that because he fractured me. He realized it. And now I was out of control. Um, and so he'd send me over to a teacher, and I started experiencing um, SA from him, and I disassociated from
Just,
that.
just before we get to the teacher, Joe, right?
Yeah.
You said that you'd went through a cycle of torture. At this point, other than the horrific mental and this voyeur and exposing, was there any further physical or any other forms of abuse from your father at this stage before we get on to the teacher? Because this is the next crucial element in your story.
Um, Nothing from a physical standpoint. It was
Yeah,
more just like guiding, right? Like
yeah,
being
yeah.
like, here, let me show you the way.
Did you feel like because you were so young at this point that it was almost this is the module for the age that you're at, and as you were going to get older and older, it was going to be more extreme forms of directioning. Looking back, anyway.
Actually, no. Here's the thing that I have learned from not only from my story, but most people's stories.
Okay.
When you look back, if there was even the slightest bit of pleasure from the essay, right? It becomes a fixation, and you lean into that regardless of the 99% of the shame, right? And I can only speak for who I work with, which are other sex offenders. And so I can't speak. And so a lot of people, well, I don't, I was abused and I didn't abuse, right? And here's actually what I'll say is anybody who's abused who hasn't been healed abuses somebody else, even if it's yourself, right? I mean, if you're abused and you don't heal that shame and rage, I don't care who you are, right?
Yeah.
You're hurting yourself, even though somebody gave it to you. I mean, to me, I think it's a sexually transmitted disease. It's an emotional one.
I work with a lady called Zara, and she is very sadly because of her story. Uh, she sort of brought the mindset of sadism into the realm of abuse as a talking point for me for the first time because we hear a lot of the terms satanic and ritualistic and all this kind of abuse, but really it boils down to a sadistic mindset. Would you agree that a lot of this could be boiled down, and it's not an excuse or anything like that, it's just a discussion point about defining actions? Do you feel like a lot, or in some cases, it's a sadistic mindset that leads to some of these SA abusers?
Oh, most definitely so. I mean, and even so much of being sadistic to yourself, right?
Mm,
I mean, I one of the communities out there that I don't know, I would identify them if I was a kid in today's is I guess the insoles, right? I mean, I
right.
was a small child. I was one of those, kids that nobody was interested in, right? And I mean, here's the truth, right? I was just surprised when a 16-year-old was interested in me. I don't care what age I was, right? It was the first time it ever friggin' happened, right? It was sick. I get it, right? It was there. And so here's what I've learned is that if it is not the 1 out of 5, if it's the 4 out of 5 that have an intergenerational trauma stigma to it, is that there usually is some sadistic part to it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, incel in and of itself is self-harming. That's a sadistic type of behavior, right? It's self-harming.
Yeah.
Um,
100%.
and so what I had to do was I had to go into an alternate state, which is voluntary celibacy, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm married, right? And so what that was to do was to find out the lust that was broken because it's all lust based, right? And so what you really want is a connection, right? So when you have a bond with somebody, it shouldn't be lust based. It's because that's selfish, right? You want a connection to
Yeah.
take place.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And so when you act in just a lust, right? And pornography today is just, I mean, it's everywhere and it's disgusting, right? I mean, we have one part of society that says we want men to be able to connect, and we have another part of society that says, "Hey, pay me $10 and I'll show you my private parts, so you don't have to have a connection." Right?
Right.
It's the
Yeah.
most confusing time to be a young man, right? I don't know if I could survive at that time.
Yeah. I mean, could you imagine everything that you'd went through in church as a child, being ridiculed, but in 2025 you get to go home and see all your friends share it on their social media,
And laugh
right?
at me,
Could
right?
you actually try and comprehend that? Could you
Yeah, no,
imagine
I've tried. It was
every single one of your worst moments? And I don't mean as an adult, right?
right.
I mean as a
Child who's
child
developing, right?
broadcast. I don't know what I mean. I honestly, do you remember that movie with Michael Douglas falling down, right? Where
Yeah,
like you get stuck in traffic that day, and by the end
right.
of the movie, he's got a big bag of pew pews and he's lost his mind. I, how that's that. I mean, I get it. Now, listen, Joe, we're on your story. You've told us about your father, this exposing himself, this access to alcohol, this access to adult material. And of course, you as a child, why wouldn't you think this is just
Well,
normal?
I idolized him, right? I mean,
Of course. Well, why wouldn't you?
he got up
Why
not only
wouldn't
but
you?
he got up in front of the church, right? And everybody else idolized him, right?
But this is the thing, Joe. It's so important that we keep remembering the mindset of a 7-year-old.
Right.
This is normal. At no point, I imagine at this point, you're not questioning anything. You're just
Right.
like,
And
okay, we're
nobody else
cracking
from
on.
the outside is questioning it either.
Right.
So
So it's a dangerous situation because it's almost like a form of conventional upbringing hostage style situation where you are held captive in a
I
world
felt
you're
like a
even
prisoner.
unaware is abnormal.
I felt like a prisoner. I wanted to escape my body so
And
many times.
now you've been moved again, you're being tortured, and now we're up to the point where you've gone to this school. Take us through this next horrific part of the journey, Joe.
So Me and my friend were playing in high school that was being built, and Pepper were
Pepper's just saying Pepper's just saying hi, everybody. Pepper's saying like and subscribe. Please share the stream. Big shout out to Pepper doing her thing.
we did a trapeze art act or something like that, and I broke my arm, right, pretty bad, and went and got it fixed, and come back to school, and within 2 or 3 hours, it got re-broke again because somebody wanted to sign it, and I didn't want them to sign it, so they broke it again. So I'm a vile little child at this time. I mean, you got to understand everything at this point. I'm a runt, right? And all I do is get picked on, and so everything is a.
You're a runt, as you say, but you're also 3 people at this point, right?